What we heard this week about how Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum allegedly manipulated data about Brexit shows just how far elites will go to undermine regular people. Switzerland's Sonntagszeitung newspaper has obtained some of the preliminary findings of an internal investigation the WEF had into Klaus Schwab. So far, they are reporting he is accused of inappropriate remarks to younger members of staff, misusing funds, and manipulating WEF research. Now, the last one is the one I want to focus on because it's important and because I don't want to imagine what inappropriate messages Klaus Schwab could send, even if it is alleged. The accusation about misusing research relates to the WEF's 2017-2018 Global Competitiveness Report, which ranks countries on their productivity and their long-term prosperity. What made this report so important is that in June 2016, so the year before the report, Britain had voted to leave the European Union.
This means that the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
You cannot describe how revolutionary that Brexit result was. This was a debate where you had affluent inner-city people on one side saying Brexit should be defeated because of GDP, global travel, their ties to Europe, and the working-class common people on the other side who wanted to be governed by people within their nation, not Europe. The pro-Brexit elites completely underestimated how angry British people were. It wouldn't be the first or last time they would do that. While 73% of politicians, 70% of big business leaders, and 90% of Britain's academia all voted to remain, more British people voted for Brexit than they had any other person or idea in British history, and Brexit passed. So, how would the elite and ruling class react? It started out so promisingly.
We should be proud of the fact that in these islands, we trust the people with these big decisions. We not only have a parliamentary democracy, but on questions about the arrangements for how we're governed, there are times when it is right to ask the people themselves, and that is what we have done.
And even Klaus Schwab, who I will get back to later, was assuring everyone that he wanted a good Brexit.
The world needs a good Brexit. It would be self-destructive for everybody to have a bad outcome of let's say, tensions which we see now between Europe and the United Kingdom, but also inside the United Kingdom.
But that didn't last long. The fact was the elites had lost, and they were angry about it. So began the longest, most drawn-out betrayal of a democratic vote in recent history. There was no way those who lost the Brexit vote were going to let it flourish. They would try what they could to convince people they had voted incorrectly and push them back into the elite's camp.
In June 2016, we had the referendum, and that expressed the will of the people, but the will of the people isn't something fixed or unchangeable. If the circumstances change, the will can change, the views can change. We knew that we voted to leave the European Union, but we didn't yet know the new relationship. We've got the right to rethink. It's not that we have to rethink, but we've got the right to rethink if we want to.
The pushback started in the negotiations. After David Cameron quit as Prime Minister since he'd supported Remain, it became Theresa May's job to negotiate Britain out of the European Union, except that she'd voted Remain too. How often are the terms of victory negotiated between the losers? The betrayal wouldn't stop here, of course. We had the debate about hard versus soft Brexit, the Northern Ireland Protocol, the nearly £24 billion that went to Brussels from Britain in the years after Britain had left. Which brings us to this World Economic Forum report and the alleged meddling from Klaus Schwab. The UK Telegraph writes that in the 2017-2018 report, the UK's ranking improved from 7th to 4th after a change in methodology. But Mr. Schwab, 87, wrote to staff that the UK must not see any improvement, as otherwise it would be exploited by the Brexit camp. The final report, published in 2017, showed the UK had dropped one place to 8th. So the UK went from this to this. Now, the Global Competitiveness Report is more than just a list. It is a great indicator of how one country's economy is faring compared to others. It is a signal to international businesses about which countries are good to invest in and build in. It is an indicator for entrepreneurs about where they should live and work if they want to get ahead. And it's a tool for voters to decide if the country they live in is on the right path or not. So, if these allegations are true, it will be a clear attempt to punish British people for voting for Brexit, and a manipulation of data for political purposes. We now have to ask ourselves, are the apparent economic harms of Brexit real, or is the situation more complex because people who personally want Brexit to fail are playing with the numbers to drive away good news? Until we get to the bottom of this, any economic research put out by the World Economic Forum on the evils of Brexit cannot be taken seriously.